Welcome back to the basement. I'm Steve Lewis. This week, I wanted to begin catching up on some of the excellent feedback, information, and perspective that has come in through the viewer comment section recently. This will be part one of 2 cool stuff episodes. That still leaves us a lot to get to, so let's get started right away. In the Today Part 1 episode, in the discussion of Please Let Me Wonder, I asked if anybody knew definitively if it was Carl or Brian saying I love you toward the end of the track. The sources I could find varied. Sound of Free, who has an excellent Beach Boys show here on YouTube, reported that both Brian and Marilyn, who was there, have said it was Brian. Scott Kennedy pointed me to an episode of Adam Marsland's excellent Pet Squares series here on YouTube. Adam reports that Brian improvised it in the studio and had Marilyn move into his line of sight so he could be looking directly at her when he said it. Morris Dowsett let me know that Matt and Greg Coffey of Beach Boys Talk reported talking to Annie Hinchy, Carl's former wife, who confirmed the story that it was Brian saying it directly to Marilyn. I would say that about settles it. It's good not only to know that it's Brian, but also to know the great story behind it. Thanks to everybody for passing along the information. Talking about the Ronettes version of I'm So Young, I mentioned how prevalent Hal Blaine's drumming is in the mix. Raymond Gill commented that in the last few years, he's come to look at I'm So Young and Be My Baby as duets between Veronica and Hal and finds them all the more enjoyable for it. I gave those tracks another listen with those comments in mind, and I found it enjoyable on that basis as well. Thanks, Raymond. A few weeks ago, I was delighted to hear from Bob Rush commenting on episode 49, Bruce, Terry, and the Rip Chords. Back in '97, Bob was instrumental in putting together a new version of the Rip Chords featuring the 2 members of the original touring group, the late Rich Rodkin and Arnie Marcus. That's Bob on the left in this photo with Rich Rodkin in the center. Bob's comments included a link to a 2003 performance of Hey Little Cobra and 409 with Rich and Arnie here on YouTube. It's a nice performance and everybody appears to be having a great time. As discussed in episode 49, the original Rip Chords were Ernie Bringus and Phil Stewart. Rich Rodkin and Arnie Marcus were brought aboard to create a touring group with Phil Stewart, while Ernie Bringus was busy attending seminary school. Rich and Arnie also appeared in publicity stills and on album covers. That's maybe a bit of an oversimplification of a complex story, but you can find more about it in episode 49. You can also check out Bob's history of the Rip Chords revival in the late 90s and early 2000s in the comments section on episode 49. I've posted a link to the 2003 live performance in the video description on this episode. In episode 255, The Beach Boys on Series TV Part 1, I wondered how Carl and some Beach Boys archival footage ended up on the October 23, 1982 episode of T.J. Hooker. Now, the band speculated that it might have been part of the hazing, initiation, degradation that Carl was subject to rejoining the band. You can come back, but you must do T.J. Hooker. I thought that was pretty funny. Go With The Flow 1966 let me know about 2 other Carl-related T.J. Hooker episodes. Carl's co-writer on his 2 solo albums, vocalist Myrna Smith, appeared as a nightclub singer in Season 2, Episode 22, Lady in Blue, which aired on May 7th, 1983. She's seen twice in the episode, both times on stage at a seedy Southside club called The Action, and both times performing a song apparently called Who Is This Witch? The first time it's a rehearsal. When they break, her sax player, a guy named Slaughter, is revealed to be one of the maggots who injured one of Hooker's fellow officers in an earlier crime. The second time we see Myrna Smith, it's during a show at the club. Hooker and Romano arrive to apprehend Slaughter and try to blend in. In an unusual bit of police work, after the song is over, Hooker from the back bar yells, "Hold it, Slaughter, police!" across the crowded club as Slaughter is leaving the stage. Slaughter makes a break for it. With Hooker nowhere near the suspect and no one covering the exits, Slaughter easily escapes and runs unimpeded into the street where he's hit by a passing car. Hooker quickly checks Slaughter's wallet, where he immediately finds the gang's next caper neatly planned out on a piece of paper. Apparently, nobody bothers tracking down the hit-and-run driver, who's never mentioned again. By the fourth season of T.J. Hooker, there's a decided change in the show's soundtrack. Obviously following the trend set by the new hit series Miami Vice, the horns and strings in the opening theme have been replaced by 80s synths and Phil Collins-style drums. The in-house background scoring has been replaced by 80s pop rock tunes. In Season 4, Episode 17, Hollywood Star, which aired on February 23, 1985, Hold Me from Carl's 1981 solo album plays during a scene in which Hooker and guest star Sharon Stone, whose character is cleverly named Danny Starr, arrive at Burbank Studios to question a director about a crime. I didn't watch the entire episode, but I noticed that, like the two other T.J. Hooker episodes we discussed, Hooker's big break comes when he finds detailed notes that the crooks made about their next planned caper. It makes me wonder if Hooker ever cracked a case where the perps didn't spell out their next move for him literally. Of course, at the time, Carl was managed by Myrna Smith's husband, Jerry Schilling, who was also famously a friend of Elvis Presley. Go With the Flow speculates that there must have been some connection between Schilling and somebody involved with T.J. Hooker. I think he's absolutely right. I tried to research this and I came up with a couple of clues. In a 2010 interview for Commercial Appeal, Schilling is quoted saying, "I did parts when I was 23, 24 on Star Trek, the original series, Man from U.N.C.L.E., SWAT, Charlie's Angels I was on a couple of times, T.J. Hooker. Those appearances must have been pretty fleeting. I wasn't able to find them listed anywhere. The only Jerry Schilling acting appearance I was able to find was on Season 4, Episode 15 of The Rookies, titled Code 5 Affair in 1975, in which he had a small part as a character named Brian. Interestingly, though they don't appear on the show, in 1974, Season 3, Episode 3 of The Streets of San Francisco, titled Target Red, featured characters named Jerry Schilling and Myrna Smith. That episode was written by Rick Husky. Like Schilling, Husky was a longtime friend of Elvis Presley. That's him on the right in a 1960 photo. Husky is a television writer and producer with a long list of credits, and according to Wikipedia, is probably best known as the creator of the television series T.J. Hooker. Husky and Schilling would later work together on the 1990 Elvis TV miniseries, among many other Elvis-related projects. I think that answers how Carl and some Beach Boys archival footage ended up on T.J. Hooker. Carl's manager Schilling and series creator Husky were old friends through Elvis Presley. I even came across an article saying that Elvis once helped Schilling buy Husky's house. Thanks for that information. Go with the flow. It was interesting to hear from the musicians on episode 256, The Beach Boys on Series TV, Part 2. Danny 1959 and Chris Murray were both struck with the product placement in the Beach Boys bingo episode of Full House for BC Rich guitars, with both John Stamos and Carl Wilson prominently displaying them. Chris elaborated that BC Rich was not really known for acoustic guitars. They were best known for their exotic-looking electric guitars and basses, 3 of which, Chris pointed out, are featured in Spinal Tap's Big Bottom video. Joel Reiner let me know that 3 episodes before the Beach Boys turned up at the Tanner's place on Full House, a number of Beach Boy associates, namely John Cowsill, Bobby Figueroa, Jeff Foskett, and Gary Griffin were there briefly singing a very Beach Boys-like jingle that Uncle Jesse had written for a water park. That was in Season 2, Episode 3, It's Not My Job, broadcast on October 28, 1988. Gary Griffin, of course, also turned up in Jesse's band in the Season 3 finale, our very first telethon, which we talked about here in Episode 256. Also in that episode, I speculated that Mike Love was probably right, that those Full House appearances brought the group some new fans. Our friend in Australia, Usual Mike Television, and Mike Sajecki, who goes by Novim9 here on YouTube, confirmed that they were among those who first found the Beach Boys through Full House. Whatever else you might say about those Full House appearances, they definitely did some good bringing people like them into the fold. Back in episode 251, Cool Stuff I Found Out Part 29, I showed this collection of Today-era Beach Boys photos, which I found tucked into the very first copy of Beach Boys concert I ever bought back in 1980. I never knew where these pictures came from, and I asked if anybody could help me out. Lamont South quickly solved the mystery, letting me know that it was a bonus insert from the sheet music collection, Beach Boys Song Hits Folio number 2, published in 1965 between the releases of Today and Summer Days and Summer Nights. Marcus 6226 concurred with Lamont and also pointed out that the folio contains the sheet music for the single version of Help Me Rhonda with an H. And Lamont noticed that though it should be the single version, it has the album version lyrics with the line "ruined our plans" instead of "shattered our plans." It isn't the kind of thing I normally collect, but since I already had the photo insert, and since copies of the song folio without the photo insert aren't very expensive, I picked up a copy of the song folio on eBay. And I will now reunite the song folio with its photo insert for the first time in at least 45 years, maybe as much as 60 years. And there we go. Thanks to Lamont and to Marcus, it is now complete once again. Very much appreciated. In addition to information about the song folio, Lamont shared with me photos of some great items that he has in his collection from his time as a Beach Boys fan club member in the mid and late 60s. There's really some amazing items there, some real ephemera that it's hard to believe has survived this long. He's allowing me to share it here, which I very much appreciate. Check this out. There's a 1967 calendar order form. I just love the typewritten text and the handwritten "for the first time anywhere" in beautiful color. It just seems delightfully homemade. They point out the calendar sells for $1 and every fan will want to own one. How else could you have the Beach Boys with you each and every day of the year? There's an order form for individual poster portraits drawn by artist Frank Morton. They're $1 each, or a set of all 6 Beach Boys individually, plus a 7th with all the portraits together for only $5. They're out of sight. There's a flyer asking for feedback on the new format of the fan club journal, and a fan club annual renewal form to be sent along with $2 to Miss Audrey Wilson, P.O. Box 110, Hollywood, California. They note that she is the president. I guess it's fitting that your mom should be the president of your fan club. There's a flyer for the grooviest contest ever held for Beach Boys fans everywhere. It promises $2,500 in prizes, with the grand prize being Denny's drums. As I read it, entrants are supposed to collect the membership fee and names and addresses of new members, group them together, and mail them in. The ones with the most new members would win. I wonder how many new members it actually took to win. The annual membership fee was $2 at the time, so could you have just written a check for $200 and sent in 100 random names and addresses and won Denny's drums? There are definitely some pretty fabulous prizes. I'd love to know who won and how many memberships it took. I noticed the 4th and 5th place prizes list an 1810 phonograph and C20 microphones and notes 2 to each phonograph. Does anybody know why that's noted? Was there some way you could use a microphone with a phonograph in those days? Could you route your voice through it to sing along with the record or something? I thought that was odd. There's Volume 1, Issue 2 of the Beach Boys Scene Fan Newsletter from August 1966. The top story being The Legend of the BB6 by Derek Taylor. The story continues on page 2 with Taylor writing about how well their new album Pet Sounds is regarded by their musical peers and others in the pop music business. He's already presenting an angle that will be highlighted in discussions of Pet Sounds right up to the present day. Also in the newsletter is a page showing their newest releases, Sloop John B., Pet Sounds, and Brian's Caroline No single, reminding fans, if you're not hearing them in your area, give your DJs a call and ask them to spin it for you. The newsletter is filled out with 3 pages of photos from their recent tour of Japan. There's a 1966 fan club group photo signed to Mont, and a 1968 fan club photo. If anybody knows how the signatures were done on these, please pass it along. Lamont and I would both like to know. It's incredible stuff and so cool that Lamont has held on to it for all these years. I wonder how many copies of things like that contest flyer or the renewal notice still exist. Not too many, I'll bet. Thanks very much for sharing it, Lamont, and for allowing me to pass it along here. Thanks also to everybody for all the great feedback, perspective, insights, and information through the comments section. As you know, this channel is a labor of love for me, so it's that kind of feedback that really makes it worthwhile. Please keep it coming. We'll get to more comments next time. I hope you'll join me for that. Meanwhile, have a great week. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.